Well, thank you very much, and hello everyone. It's lovely to be here in Paris. Thank you very much to Arnaud and the whole team for inviting me to be here. The Ryder Cup. So for those who perhaps aren't as familiar with the game of golf, the Ryder Cup is the biggest match in golf. So every 2 years, it pitches teams from Europe against teams from America. And as Thierry says, it was most recently held in France. Now let me just give you a little history of our event. So back in 1926, there was a friendly match between Great Britain at the time and America. And this took place in Surrey, in England. And in the crowd was a man named Samuel Ryder. He was a seed merchant, a businessman, who had recently taken up the game of golf, and he loved what he saw so much that he thought, well, I'm going to do something. I'm going to donate a trophy for this match to continue. So the next year, in 1927, they played for the first official Ryder Cup. Now, it's fair to say that for the next few years or decades, perhaps, the American team was pretty dominant. Right through into the 70s, they won a lot. Fueled by players, some really famous golfers who you may or may not recognize, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, for instance. They were pretty dominant. So the decision was taken in 1979 to stop it being a match of Great Britain against America and to make it Europe against America. And the first match featured the great Seve Ballesteros, one of the foremost golfers of our times. The impact wasn't instant. But actually, from the mid-80s, Europe have come roaring back and have only actually lost 5 of the last 20 or so Ryder Cups. So they're on phenomenal form. Now, as we mentioned, in just a month ago, the Ryder Cup came to Paris. And it's fair to say that, and should also note as well, that Europe were victorious here. Thomas Bjorn's team beat what was considered probably the strongest American team that had ever been brought out. Now, there was an incredible amount of hard work, not just in the last year or two, but over the last decade, from a man named Pascal Grisot, who was responsible for the bid, the Fédération Française de Golf, who spent so much time and effort organising this, and Le Golf National, the host venue out in Saint-Quentin and Yvelines. And it's fair to say it paid off. This was, without doubt, the biggest edition of the Ryder Cup we've ever had in Europe. To put that into some context, so we had 270,000 fans coming to the venue through the course of the week from 90 different countries around the world. We had over 40 TV networks broadcasting live to a reach of just over 600 million possible homes. 100%, for the first time ever, 100% of the top 10 players were in the teams here at the Golf National. There were 55 terabytes of data shared across the on-course Wi-Fi networks, and I'll come on to that in a second, why that's quite a formidable feat. And just to give an idea of the more commercial side of things, we sold nearly 260,000 products out of our on-course shops. So, look, this was big. And the real task for us is, and I'm thinking as I sit here or stand here in a conference about sports innovation, I don't think there've been many people here who would disagree with me that perhaps golf isn't the most innovative sport, or it's certainly not known as the most innovative sport. But that's why this is more important for us. We have to take the opportunities. We don't get the Ryder Cup every week. We get the Ryder Cup every 2 years, every 4 years in Europe. So we have to leverage this, and we have to use it to change the game, to grow the game. And so innovation is absolutely key. So we had to make some big changes to how we run the Ryder Cup here in France, for the brand, for the game, and for France itself as well, who've put so much into hosting it. So I've got around about just under 12 minutes left. So this might be a little ambitious. 12's an interesting number for the Ryder Cup. There are 12 players on the Ryder Cup team. So I'm going to try and give you 12 things that made the Ryder Cup in Paris bigger, better, more innovative than any of the ones we've done before. Might be quantity over quality, but you'll see we're going to cover a pretty broad spread of things, from fan experience to content to broadcast. I'm going to start with technology, though, which is the backbone of any sports event nowadays, the technological infrastructure. And it's fair to say that in Paris, this was a real step change for us. With a new partnership with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, we invested more in a tech infrastructure than has ever been done before. Now, this is not an easy thing in golf. We are not a fixed stadium sport. We tend to work in fields of the Golf National. It's 150 acres worth of just field. So we have a lot of work to do. And that involved laying 200 kilometers of fiber optic cable right the way around the course. That enabled us, that enabled 3.2 million different on-course Wi-Fi sessions all around. This doesn't happen in golf very often. As I mentioned, 55 terabytes of data shared. That's 5 times what was shared during the Super Bowl. 37 different location-based notifications. So we had our app running, and we had 37 positions on site where people could receive location-based notification. And we had over 1.5 kilometers squared surface area of big screen running on this network. But the technological infrastructure is kind of irrelevant if it doesn't add to the experience of those who are at the event. And we took this to another level as well in Paris. For the first time ever, we had 2 different spectator villages, 2 huge spectator villages, and we really pushed with our partners to make sure we could do some truly innovative, interesting, original things. Taking this one, for example, this is our first tee experience sponsored by one of our key partners, Aberdeen Standard Investments. So this was a simulator experience designed to give people the feeling of teeing off on the first tee. It's a pretty daunting affair. So there was some simulator technology, as you can see. People's heart rates were measured, and the actual competition was if you chose to play for Europe or America, whoever managed to do it with the lowest heart rate was victorious. And then, as you'll see on the video, we used RFID to collect information from people so we could enhance social sharing. So that's just one of the examples of the spectator experience. Just down the way in the village, we had our main shop, and as I mentioned, we sold quite a lot of products here. Golfers like to buy stuff, which is good for us. I mean, it certainly helps commercially. But in Paris, what we did, this was a real change for us. The main shop, we had 4 different shops on site. The main one had a 3.8 kilometers squared of retail space within it. And as I mentioned, we sold over 260,000 products across the week, including 70,000 hats alone. There were over 850 different product lines, everything you can imagine, literally everything you could imagine. There were 30 different global brands involved, 5 of which were allowed for the first time to build their own shops within the shop, which created a much different spectator experience and allowed us to surpass by some distance anything we've ever done at a Ryder Cup before. So a lot of those guys who had been to the shop then followed on, certainly on the Thursday, to our opening ceremony. Now, as you can see from pictures like this tends to be a pretty traditional affair. And that's the interesting thing about innovation for the Ryder Cup, I guess, as an organisation. There's a rich heritage there, there's a rich history. And when you innovate, you need to be respectful of that when you do. And this is the perfect example. We wanted to change the opening ceremony. We didn't want it to be just men in blazers stood in a line with 5-10 speeches back to back. So what we did, we made some big changes to the format. We made it about the fans on the ground, but also made it about a live TV audience. This was a show broadcast live on TV across Canal+, across Sky, across NBC in the States, hosted by Monsieur Ginola there, which was a real step change for how we ran this. We kept some of the traditional elements. For instance, we have a tradition of announcing the pairings who will play the first match during the opening ceremony. We continue to do that, but we brought some new elements in. There were live music during the ceremony from Kaiser Chiefs and from Jane, who also continued and played concerts later that evening to entertain the fans on the ground. So, and it created an atmosphere, and it was our biggest ever audience, both on the ground and at home. Now, speaking of the audience at home, our broadcast was very different this year as well. So we had 140 different live cameras around the golf course, including 3 quite innovative and new ways of shooting for us. For instance, this little chap here who was a boat cam, who could pick up, there's a lot of water at Le Golf National, so golfers don't tend to like courses where there's too much water. There's a lot of water here, and this guy could pick up some quite interesting footage, as you see, some angles that we just can't normally get in the broadcast. And the second one here is something affectionately called lipstick cam, because it's so small that you can see it can pick up the action and can pick up the atmosphere in a way that we've never been able to do before. And probably the biggest investment and innovation for us from a broadcast perspective was a 640-metre wire cam. Now, we're all quite familiar with wire cams in sport. This one spanned pretty far and enabled us to get some pretty magnificent shots of the whole course and see how good Le Golf National and this Paris course looked. So, big change for us on broadcast. Big changes for us in the digital world as well. So our digital content, and again, this is a benchmark, this is a hallmark of what sports organisations need to do. And in Paris in 2018, we took this to another level. So for 160 million social impressions. This was 3 times what we achieved in Scotland in 2014 and what was achieved out in Minneapolis in 2016. There were over 32 million video views, a lot of which were for branded content with our sponsors, which was a real innovation for us. And this was all able to be achieved because we had a big team on the ground. We invested more in this than ever, and we gave those teams the access they needed. But it wasn't the polished content, actually, that was the most successful. Our most successful video, I'll show you in a second. The background to this is there was a pairing that came together who were unbelievably successful. Their names were Francesco Molinari and Tommy Fleetwood. They played together in every match. They won together consistently. There was discussions of a close bond between the two. So the next morning, some of our guys went and filmed this, which did pretty well.
How good was that for you?
4 out of 4.
Yeah. I'd give you 5 out of 5, Frankie.
So yeah, they'd basically won 4 and 5 matches respectively. So, but you can see the point. And it's things like that. It was the access that we could give, and that actually the team allowed, which really changed this for us and allowed Paris to be the biggest in terms of social media that we've ever had. So when we talk about social media, another key part of what we do and try to leverage is in golf is there's a lot of famous people who like to play golf. Golf is a big participation sport, and in Paris more than ever we brought this to the fore. So we had a celebrity match, as you can see from the shots here, which was broadcast live across TV, got countless hits across social media, and probably the first time ever that you will see Samuel L. Jackson there, as you'll see, playing with the greatest Olympian ever, Michael Phelps, against French legend Danny Boone and One Direction's Niall Horan. It was a strange day, but a fantastic day all the same. And a key part of our strategy, we need golf to reach more people, and these are the guys who can unlock that audience for it. So Paris is important for that. Another key audience for us is the future. It's the youngsters, it's the youth coming into the game. And we've had the Junior Ryder Cup for a number of years now. However, the Junior Ryder Cup we held in Paris was bigger than any one that we've ever done, due largely to the contribution and the efforts of the Fédération for Golf in France, and due also to our partners, Disneyland Paris, who hosted the event, as you can see here, which was an incredible platform for mixed teams in the Junior Ryder Cup to come and play in front of big crowds, really feel what it feels like to be a star and prepare them for the big stage. And this is a key part of it. I mean, if you look, there was 2 guys in the actual Senior Ryder Cup teams who had come from the Junior Ryder Cup, both Rory McIlroy and Tony Finau on the US teams, had both played in 2004. Staying with the juniors, one thing that golf often gets challenged with is it's too long, it's too slow, it's too boring, it's too difficult to go and play. So at the European Tour, we take that to heart. It's quite personal. And so we do a lot about how can we innovate, how can we change our format. And in the last 2 years, we've done a lot to bring in some different formats to the main tour. One which example is Golf Sixes, a 6-hole golf competition, which takes around an hour to play rather than 4 hours to play. And so we brought Golf Sixes to the Ryder Cup. The junior teams came on the Wednesday just before the main matches started and played a Golf Sixes match in front of 25,000 people, which gave this new format a brand new platform. So we've talked a bit about the spectator and fan experience. There was a bit of innovation here in terms of the team itself as well, the performance of the team. Now, golf has traditionally not been the most forthcoming in using statistics to further the game. Thomas Bjorn, who was the European captain, was a a quite future-facing captain in that sense. He wanted the statistics. So we worked with a partner called 15th Club, who literally mined every single number you could imagine to come up with a model which would tell him how the players were going to finish in the rankings, who would be best placed in what hole, who should play with who, even that if they were put head-to-head against another player, what is the likely outcome. And the real benefit of this and what will come out of it is that following this information is now being made available to all European Tour golfers. There's a real legacy for this data and this transition in Ryder Cup. So that's 10 new things we bought. I'm just going to finish with 2 elements where actually we kind of didn't innovate. We kind of stuck to our roots in it. Number 11 is the first tee, and it's often said that at the Ryder Cup, the first tee at the Ryder Cup is a bucket list experience. It's something all sports fans want to go and experience. And I'll be honest, we tried to change it. We had some experiments. We put some music on. We put some entertainment on. It didn't work, and actually we went back to the roots of it. And as you can see from here, the magic of it is just a big crowd. Nothing accompany them singing. Which is just an awesome spectacle, and the first tee was bigger than by about 3 times than the one we had in Scotland, and the noise was pretty sensational. And so the last one, and we've talked about the importance of innovation to golf, particularly to golf, as we drive forward. Innovation in our own way. And again, I fully accept that lots of people here would say none of this is innovation compared to some sports, but we have to innovate in the right way for us. But we also have to be true to our roots as well, and that's something that Thomas Bjorn as a captain was also very keen on. For instance, the layout of his locker room, all of the team's lockers were interspersed with the bags from all of the living past captains to bring that history through to the fore. I mean, we are so lucky to have an event that has created such a legacy, created such a story, and it's absolutely amazing that Paris now writes itself, rightly so, into that history. And much as we will use this as a platform to innovate and change, we'll also understand what it means to be part of the Ryder Cup. And I'm just going to leave you with a very short video that Thomas Bjorn actually played to the team the night before the first matches, which kind of sums up better than I can what the Ryder Cup is really about. Thank you. It is a slow start as well, actually, so.
You know, as you get older, things get taken away from you. And that's a part of life. You learn to treasure the opportunities you've had and reflect on those moments that have defined you, both good and bad.
This is more than just a game. You live it. Breathe it. And you've worked hard to be here. And it's not just about taking part, it's about winning. Nothing else.
Sevi showed me there are times where you need to reach into the depths of your soul to get you.
This one is for him.
Sorry about that. Honesty is everything. You only get out what you put in, but you never give up.
So outdo what they can do.
You outdrive them.
You outperform them.
You wear them down with excellence.
You beat them. You give it absolutely everything. So come Sunday night, you can honestly say to yourself, I have no more to give.
Somebody said, all men die, but not all men live. Well, this is the time to feel alive.
And when you stand there on your final rounds, remember,
There is a tomorrow as a Ryder Cup winner.
Or there is a tomorrow where you're not.
don't leave with any regrets.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. You will come back for the panel later on, but I have a question for you
Go
right
for
now.
it.
Yesterday we talked a lot about how it is sometimes difficult for mainly sports organizations to change the culture, the mindset, and looking outside of the box to innovate. I mean, you have to deal with a sport that is fairly conservative. So how have you been able to change, to bring that innovation spirit?
It's tough. I mean, it is tough because I think where we're fortunate is we have a group of players at the top of the game now who want to innovate. They recognise the need for this game to change, to bring in the young audience. The worry is that by bringing in and changing too radically, you alienate what is the consistently strong base audience that already exists for this game. So, I mean, we are fortunate in that we do have those people with those mindset, but as I say, we have to treat it carefully. We have to innovate in the right way for us, and we have to do it in a way that respects the roots and the traditions of the game, but also does continue to bring things through that do fit in better with how people live their lives now.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you. Congratulations again. You will come back later on stage for more.